Welcome to the Lakeshow podcast presented by Jack in the Box. This is a weekly deep dive into the biggest stories and topics surrounding the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm Mike Trudell, filling in today for either Allie or Geeter, and joined by Lakers insider Mike Bresnahan and Jovan Buha. So we just got back from Phoenix, Jovan. Not the best game for the Lakers.
Yeah.
They fell behind by a lot in the first quarter, end up trailing by as many as 20. They did cut the lead down to 2 in the third quarter, but then Phoenix kind of raced away with it again. So I'll start with you, Brez. You were watching here from the studio. A lot building up to this game for the Lakers, a lot of excitement. Hey, maybe if the Lakers win, look how much closer they could be in the standings.
Yep.
Maybe they could get out of the play-in eventually. And just some steam probably falls out of the team after losing in the manner that they did.
Yeah, you know, here's the deal. Like, there's going to be a bunch of games remaining against teams ahead of them or right below them in Golden State's case. You got to win all those games. It's a ridiculous ask because I think they have like 10 games against teams, in the play-in tournament right now, still remaining, and you got to win them all. And to lose the one against Phoenix, last time you're going to play in this season, they played each other like 11 times. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but it's kind of too bad that they won't be able to, make up ground on Phoenix anymore. So big picture, we were bummed, definitely. It's like, okay, I'm not sure they're going to get in the top 6. I feel like even 6 is a reach right now.
Yeah.
Can they avoid the 9-10? That's what we talked about a lot on the post-game show after yesterday's game. That's the key. You don't want to be in that 9-10 game. You don't want any part of it if you can avoid it.
Jovan, I jumped right into business there, but I do want to say that, as Brez pointed out earlier, I like the shirt and the shoes combo. That is the main thing that I think about when I'm dressing for games, right? I start with the shoes, then go to the tie that matches.
Shoes? Interesting.
Yeah, I got to start with the shoes and the tie, and then I go around that, okay, which suit fits best with the shirt and shoes combo. So I appreciate you bringing that to us today.
I appreciate that.
What is your takeaway as you left Phoenix and now think about things back here in Los Angeles?
Yeah, so from the Lakers' perspective, I was disappointed by the lack of urgency that they started that game with. Getting down by, trailing by 17 at the end of the first quarter, to me was inexcusable with how important that game was. And it felt like, I know for us, sometimes people in the media kind of complain about the early start times. Like there's pros to it. You're done earlier.
I like it.
You can enjoy the rest of the day.
I like the early. You're home early.
But I'm not much of a morning person, so for me, it kind of throws off my routine. I have to get there a bit earlier. So it felt like the team thought the game was starting at 7:30 still, or
that first quarter,
maybe 2:30. But that was a rough start. And to me, again, with the margin for error that they have, for them to come out that way, and then as AD talked about and different players talked about after the game, like you basically have to play a perfect game the rest of the way. And they had several runs. They didn't give up. They were resilient. There was that stretch where they got it to 2 late in the third, and it looked like maybe it was going to follow the script of the first 3 Lakers wins against the Suns, where Suns go up big, Lakers methodically chip away at the lead. Then in the fourth quarter, Suns kind of collapse, Lakers take over, and they win the game. But the Suns role players made some big shots. I think part of that was the Lakers' defensive strategy. As Darvin likes to say, operation successful, patient dies. That was, to me, like, you stopped Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, but you still lost the game because Nurkic goes off for 18 and 22. Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen each hit 6 threes.
6 threes.
And those guys get confident throughout the course of the game. And then when it comes to crunch time and they have to make big shots, they're already in a rhythm because you've been leaving them open, because you're doubling, shading over, all that stuff. So to me, I think the defensive strategy, I understood it because, like, point of attack, they don't have the best isolation defenders right now available, given who's out. But I do think it ultimately kind of cost them, where those guys were able to get into a rhythm, and that kind of snowballed throughout the game.
So, Brez, operation successful, patient died. That's not what happens in every NBA surgery, which we know is always successful. The immediate after it happens, that's in the aftermath, right? We know that every surgery is successful. I was kind of struck in the first half by the lack of offensive or the lack of defensive rebounding by the Lakers as something that just typified a lot of what Jovan was saying. It was 9-0 in the first half. And I do think that Phoenix deserves some credit for playing bigger. Frank Vogel knows what's going to work against LeBron and AD, certainly. And so, like, in doing that, though, Nurkic was all over the offensive glass. Bol came in. O'Neal, the aforementioned, who hit 6 threes, was getting offensive rebounds, sometimes on the jump shots. And that just, to me, showed that maybe the Lakers weren't as queued up on one hand. And then B, maybe they played a little bit smaller. Again, going to big minutes off the bench for Prince, big minutes off the bench for Dinwiddie, only 5 for Jackson Hayes. Christie only gets 5. So what did you think, Brett? Was it a mix of those two things?
Yeah, I think it's attrition too. I mean, look, no Christian Wood. He can get you some rebounds. No Jared Vanderbilt, who is a very good rebounder from his position. Hurts to miss those guys, period. Not going to claim injury, whining though. Darvin put a stop to that a few weeks ago when he said, no more injury excuses. It's time to play. And I agree. And I heard some of the complaints about the free throws after the game, but to me, the game was lost because of the offensive rebounding. Lakers had 3 as a team. Nurkic by himself had 7. And Phoenix is not known as a good rebounding team. They were 21st before that game last night.
Oh, and there were those 2 killer ones in the first quarter that resulted in threes. Right, immediately, like offensive rebound 3, next possession, offensive rebound 3, and Lakers all of a sudden they're down 15.
Yeah, I mean, it almost looked like a power play, but a 5-on-3 power play throughout the entire game. I mean, it was just so hard for the Lakers to squeeze a defensive rebound. After a while, it's like, this team, again, not a real great rebounding team, very mediocre, and they really beat the Lakers on the boards. And then I would say, the free throw disparity is weird. Not one free throw for AD. None for the Lakers in the second half. There's something there too. But to me, it's intent and effort, and there was a lack of that, and you can tell by the rebounding.
Jovan, so Darvin Ham did shorten the rotation some, which you would expect, and I think that's the right approach in a game like this. But the minute distribution, as I just referred to, was a little bit on the smaller side. What did you think of that, and how do you think that plays out over these next couple of weeks, in which Brett just mentioned Christian Wood and Jared Vanderbilt may not be back in that time period?
Yeah, I think I understood it as like the initial game plan of I mean, they only had 9 roster players available, given Maxwell and JHS were South Bay, and then you had 4 rotation guys injured. So okay, you only have 9 guys. You have 2 days off, so you can play LeBron and AD heavier minutes. You can play the starters heavier minutes, and they're gonna have a couple days of rest, and so you can kind of play it more like a playoff game. But to me, once it became clear the ways that Phoenix was attacking them, and a lot of second side action stuff, a lot of offensive rebounding, I just didn't understand why Max Christie didn't play more minutes. And then when asked about it after the game, I didn't really understand Darvin Ham's explanation for it. He said that Anthony Davis got in foul trouble and that threw off the rotation. But that to me is more of a reason for why Jackson Hayes didn't play as much, maybe, he kind of put him in a different spot, and they lost those minutes with Jackson. So I could see him maybe going away from him just in that given matchup. But he didn't play Max Christie in the first half. And Max Christie was their best available perimeter defender. He was also their best available rebounding guard, comparing him to Austin, D'Lo, Spencer, if you want to throw Torian as a guard or a wing. So to me, given the 2 areas that the Lakers were struggling in the most in that game, Max Christie addressed those needs better than Torian Prince or Spencer Dinwiddie. So, and it wasn't like those guys were shooting the ball well or like attack, they weren't having great offensive performances either. So I just didn't really understand that. Again, Jackson, sometimes his leash can be a little short depending on how his first shift goes. So that one I had less of an issue with, although I think they probably could have benefited playing bigger. But to me, Max should have played 15 to 18 minutes, and I didn't get the 4 minutes, not including garbage time.
Yeah, the Jackson Hayes stuff, Brez, is difficult because this is somebody who struggled early in the season a lot, to the point where when he was in the game, he was most often setting illegal screens or committing defensive fouls, right? And he just couldn't stay on the floor. And he really turned it around, though, in a big way, to the point where he was not just out there kind of just being himself. He was actually helping the team win games. And so in this one, Jovan just mentioned it, his first stint that he got, I think he was a -8 in those 5 minutes. The Lakers were not playing well, and Darvin Ham didn't go back to him. So that is understandable. And we are great in the media at looking after the game at the plus minus.
We're all fantastic,
right? And thinking, well, you should have done this, should have done that. To me, it's just more systemic as to what this team has been throughout the season. When they've been smaller, and like when somebody like Prince or Reddish has been at the 3, versus when it's been Rui or Vanderbilt, or even giving more minutes to Hayes or Wood. It's very stark. Like it's a very big difference. And so I just wonder, as we get into the end of these 2 games in February and then the big stretch in March, not to look forward too much though, those things do have significance, and I'm just interested to see it if it continues to be closer to the early February when they were playing bigger, even without Vanderbilt back yet and without Wood back, or if it's going to be more of these smaller groups now that Dinwiddie is going to be looked to play more and have a big role, and if Torian Prince is going to keep playing big minutes.
Yeah, I'm thinking small. And here's the big problem.
No.
Yeah, right. But here's the problem. No Christian Wood for an indefinite period of time. I mean, when can we steadfastly say he's back? You know,
Yeah, the re-eval in 2 weeks, and then we'll see from there, right?
And look at the teams that are going to be playing. You know, Denver, that's a big front line. You know, Minnesota, that's there's obviously some pretty good size there. There's some teams where
Milwaukee, another big team.
Thank you. They're going to need some size, and they're not going to have it. So I can see them saying, all right, screw it. You know, Giannis, Brook Lopez, you're going to have to try to run up and down the court to stay with us. So, there's just not enough people. There's not enough bodies. Again, they're having a season of attrition. There's a stat they use all the time in hockey. Jovan, you ever cover hockey?
No.
Okay, I covered the LA Kings for 1 year, and it's called Man Games Lost to Injury. And for the first time, we had it on our network during a pregame show a couple weeks ago. I'm like, that's a hockey stat. And we're applying it to Lakers. Why? Because they've had so many man games, individual games lost to injury. And, they've been top three pretty much the whole season.
For the last, 3-4 seasons?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost, we talk about all the time on the air, Mike, like, you have a tough job because you're the guy who kicks off the pregame show in the A block, as we call it. It's never like, hey, man, what's it like in New Orleans? How was the food last night? Did you go to Mardi Gras?
Or no, I'd love to ask.
Like that.
I'd love to ask a basketball question
Right.
just about what the scheme is that night, but instead we have to tick the box of okay, wait, who's playing today?
Exactly.
And who's not? And once you get past that, yeah.
And we always say you have the tough job of delivering. Well, this guy's probably not going to play, and this guy might be back. Sometimes it's good news if you're a Laker fan, but you are really like Dr. Trudell. I mean, you have these reports every pregame.
That is sort of the modern NBA, with the exception of like the Sacramento Kings, who apparently just never get injured.
No one gets hurt
and have
ever.
had their entire starting lineup, because I keep predicting their downfall, Jovan. And then tonight they're playing, or at the time of recording the podcast, no Jimmy Butler against them, no Paul George against them the previous night in which they won, no Michael Porter Jr. missed the last game when they played against Denver, and they've been healthy for all these games. So I had kind of chalked that up as we look at who could the Lakers potentially pass as the Kings dropping some of these games because they still can't defend, and yet they've just had this health thing going for them, and certainly the Lakers have not. But most of the rest of the league, including Phoenix, who they just lost to, is also banged up.
Yeah, I think that was the thing that kind of flew under the radar, was you could look at the Lakers and say, okay, no Vando, no Cam, no Christian Wood, no Gabe. He's been basically missed the whole season. But Phoenix didn't have Bradley Beal, and they didn't have Eric Gordon, who you can make a case on some nights can be their fourth best player. So
probably would have rather had him than out there than Royce O'Neal last night in hindsight. But
yeah, and then so there was an unintended consequence of that. They ended up playing a bit bigger. But to me, it goes back to I think Max should be playing more, and I think he showed something on that East Coast road trip, like closing that game in New York. I thought was really big. And again, I think Torian has gotten a lot of flack from the fan base because of starting when he wasn't projected to, and maybe playing more minutes. But I think like in a certain role he can be very effective. I just think he's been overtasked with too much. And to me, he's more of like a 18 to 20 minutes if he's really feeling it. But like last night, for example, I mean, he plays 26 minutes and he has 1 rebound. And you're playing him at the 3 and sometimes even the 4, and not that rebounding is the end all be all for a forward's value, but theoretically, again, with kind of what they were facing with Phoenix being so active on the offensive glass, if you're playing 26 minutes, you should be getting at least 4 or 5 rebounds as like an average forward. And he's really struggled with that this season. And it's not like he's boxing out and is this physical forward that's like, like Steven Adams would box out in OKC and then Russ comes in for the rebound. Like that's not Torian's game either. So to me, he's more of a finesse forward who's really more of a big shooting guard kind of playing up. And I think Max is someone who's athletic, he's energetic, he comes in, he boxes out, he rebounds, he will help AD in the paint. So like when looking at the Lakers being undersized and undermanned, I think you got to look at ways to kind of problem solve that. And to me, that's more of a Max Christie or a Jackson Hayes, and maybe less of a Torian, especially if you're kind of playing him up a position or two compared to what he should be playing.
Totally agree. I think that right there, kind of even until you get Christian Wood or Jared Vanderbilt back, then if you just take some of those Prince minutes, give them to Christie and Hayes, and say it's 10 of them, and then boom, like that, all of a sudden you're bigger, you're better rebounding, you're better in terms of loose balls, you're just a little bit more athletic. You can protect LeBron a little better. You can protect AD a little better, so they don't have to do all of the dirty work. And that's what we had been starting to see in February. The Phoenix game just kind of reverted to what it had been before. All right, good stuff there, guys. Looking ahead, though, to the upcoming schedule. Tough stretch in terms of opponents. 11 of the next 12 are at Crypto.com Arena.
Yes,
in fact, though.
Yeah.
Yes, and then here's the but.
Yeah.
10 of those 12 games come against teams who are above 500. So, Brez, on the one hand, these games being at Crypto.com, like that gives the Lakers, we've seen they've been better there just this year. So that gives them a better chance of winning them. And also, there's not going to be one of those games where you just show up to the arena and kind of think, oh, okay, this one's in the bag.
Yeah.
Don't need to bring the effort.
Except for Washington.
Well, yes.
Because you know Kuz is going to want to go nuts.
That's more like the Spurs game. Although like Wemby though brought the energy up from that game for sure.
No, I agree.
But they stink.
They stink. And
just relative to the other NBA teams.
They also play Atlanta, so you can't. They're not great, but you can't sleep on Atlanta either because they'll try to run you off the court.
Yeah, and they've got DeJounte Murray starting with Trae Young on the bench. Like they've got a little energy behind that. They're going to see if that works. Maybe what happens in the offseason. Alas, what stands out to you when you look at this next stretch for the Lakers?
Mike, they cannot do what they did for most of January. They cannot go 6-5 at Crypto.com, including a Clipper home game. 6-4 at home if you want to be, exact about it. They can't have this barely over 500 thing going forward for the next few weeks, because if they do, that's troubling, because then you're starting to run out of home games.
For context, the reason why is because they're 4 back in the loss column of almost everybody in front of them, right?
Yeah, I mean they're a game ahead of Golden State for 9th, and they have 4 very important games coming up over the next month or so. They play Sacramento twice, they play Golden State twice. I think they have to go 4-0 in those games. It's a lot. I'm asking a lot on this podcast. But I think that's what they have to do. 3
of those games at home, and then the one road is at Sac.
At Sac.
Yeah.
And those are the 2 games you have to win. You have to beat Golden State. You have to stay ahead of them. You don't want to fall to 10. If you fall to 10, it is really hard to win 2 games, both on the road, to get into like the 8th seed. If you're 9th, all right, okay, so you win that game. You still got to go on the road for the next one. So you really want to avoid that game. So you got to keep Golden State below you in the standings. And I think Sacramento's a team they need to target. And like you said, Mike, they've been getting some luck with injuries on other teams. I'm not convinced that they are the team that they were last year. Obviously, they finished, 2nd in the West a year ago?
I mean, third, but
was it third?
But then they lost in round 1 as well. They should have.
Yeah. So they are to me a play-in tournament team, and the Lakers need to fight like hell to pass that team, because you play them twice. You don't play Dallas twice. You don't play Phoenix again. You play New Orleans once in the last game of the regular season. That's all you're going to. And it's at New Orleans. Yeah, that's all you're going to get for them. There's not a lot of, hey, we play you 3 times, and we play you 3 times as well. They have 2 games against these 2 teams. They got to win all 4 of them, Jovan. Is that too much to ask?
No, but okay. I think it's going to be tough. Yeah. Clearly. For me, I'm looking at it as, we know the Lakers are pretty much locked into a top 10 seed, barring a disastrous.
Utah gave up.
Yeah.
Houston's been
Houston's
losing.
Still
yeah.
I mean, barring a disastrous end to the season and like an injury or something, like they're going to be a top 10 seed. They're going to be a play-in team. It's just a matter of course, what seed they are, and you'd rather be in the 7-8 because you have a couple chances to advance.
Like last year.
And kind of the years they have been in the play-in in advance, they've always been in that 7-8 matchup. Now, that said, I think for me, I'm going to be looking at it more from like a playoff matchup perspective, because I really think that, depending on where they end up, like their playoff first round matchup is going to dictate how far they go in the playoffs. And like, I think the West right now is it's a game of rock, paper, scissors, where it's really matchup based and strengths versus weaknesses. And like for the Lakers, there's a path where you are the 8 seed and you play Denver in round 1. And I'm sorry, I'm going to pick Denver
that's trouble.
In probably 4 or 5 games in that series. There's also a path where you're the 8 seed and you get Minnesota or OKC in round 1.
Mm-hmm.
And
something different there.
Maybe one of those teams drops to like the 4 or 5 as well. And now all of a sudden you have a potential conference finals path where I really like the matchups against Minnesota and OKC. So like, I want to see, I mean, of course there's got to be the urgency. There's got to be the winning. And that's like the most important thing, but you're playing OKC in the next 2 weeks. You're playing Minnesota in the next 2 weeks. You're playing the Clippers in the next 2 weeks. You're playing Denver in the next 2 weeks. Those are all your four top 4 seeds that you're going to be playing one of those if you make the playoffs. So I want to see, like, what does it look like against the Clippers for this upcoming game? Like, what does it look like against Denver when you've lost 7 straight to them? Like, what does it look like against OKC and Minnesota, 2 teams you've played well in the regular season? So, like, I'm starting to kind of get into playoff mode of, okay, we kind of know, like, they're going to be the 7 seed, 8 seed, whatever. But, like, what do those matchups look like, and what's advantageous for the Lakers?
Where do you think they will fall right now if you were to analyze everything?
Like, I think they're treading toward being the 9 seed.
Okay.
And then likely, I guess, being I would pick them to be the 8 seed.
So they'll have to win, obviously, 2 games to get in, including one on the road.
I'm probably a couple steps behind you in that I think before you start even worrying about matchups, it is paramount to get out of the 9 seed. Because when just thinking about LeBron James, you're 21, and Anthony Davis, if you have to ramp up to the level that they did, which we know they can, of the in-season tournament, and like really bring the A game in the 9-10 game, then you just have to do that again.
2 days
on
later.
the road, only for the right to go face the 1 seed. If you can get in the 7-8 game, and LeBron and AD only have to ramp up once, and whether that's against Phoenix or Golden State, these are teams that they've beaten this year, and that we know that they can. And by the way, they've also beaten the Thunder. They've beaten the Clippers. Now, they haven't beaten the Nuggets or the Wolves yet. I think that they can. Well, Nuggets, I mean, that's a different story. Minnesota, certainly, they were in both those games. But that, to me, is kind of where they have to be thinking as at least first. Like, if they can get up, if they can pass somebody right now just to get into that 7-8 territory, and to do that, like all of the stuff we're talking about, what's the best way to do that? Just win their own games. Just win their own games.
To be clear, like I'm in agreement with both of you. I was just trying to zig a little bit where Brez was zagging, so I didn't want to just make the same point.
No, I see what you're saying.
I think for like, of course, first and foremost, like, win as many games as possible. Try and get the 6 seed if you can, or the 7 seed. But I think looking at how tough the schedule is, they have one of the toughest remaining. I think they have the 5th toughest remaining schedule. Now that's not factoring in home games, so like, maybe you factor in the home games, it drops to like 10th or something. But like, they have a pretty tough schedule, especially in comparison with Golden State, who was the 25th, which is the 5th easiest.
Sacramento schedule is not too hard.
So
either.
Like, they're probably gonna finish but 8th or 9th, I would guess. And then, but that is a big difference, right? You have 2 shots versus 1, so we'll see.
And by the way, Mike, if you're in the 9-10, okay, they've already got 1 extra game they've played this season because of the in-season tournament championship. If you play the 9-10,
can't take that away though, Brez.
They have the banner.
It's up there.
Then if you're forced to play the 9-10, that's another extra game. Then if you win that, you got to play 7-8.
And the highest of leverage games too.
Yeah,
losing out.
Yeah, so they could go into the first round having played 3 extra games. Yeah, no team wants that, especially a Laker team with LeBron and AD.
Last point here before we throw to break. I think strength of schedule, it means something, but a lot of that to me comes down to more to motivation that each team has to win the game. So if you have the team that's got the best record in the league, which right now would be Boston, Lakers have already played them, but let's say it's Minnesota, the best record in the West. Well, if you play them at the end of March and they're basically locked in to where they're at, they don't have to play that game the same way that you might if you're desperately fighting and clawing to get out of the play-in, and that's not going to be reflected in strength of schedule. Whereas if you play a team that's closer to like Golden State right now, who is 10th, they are probably going to have more on the line than, say, OKC. And which team would you rather play? So it becomes less to me of a just looking at what the opponent's record is as to who's got the more and the heavier motivation on a day-to-day basis, like the Lakers did when they made their desperate run last season. All right, plenty more to come. We're taking a break, but when we return, it's your favorite game, Brez. Jovan, it's going to be your favorite game. It's bucket or brick. Welcome back to the Lakeshow podcast, presented by Jack in the Box. A little more closer to Billy Mack there, although not quite. He has a little more of an inflection in his voice.
Jack in the Box.
If you're enjoying the show, you can check out more original podcasts from our Spectrum News journalists on the Spectrum News app. Just head to the podcast section to listen to the latest episodes. You can download the Spectrum News app on the App Store or Google Play. And now, it is time for Bucket or Brick, presented by Jack in the Box. Here's the first question. And Jovan, let's go ahead and start with you. Max Christie played just 5 minutes in the loss to the Suns. Bucket or brick? Max Christie's role is the biggest question mark for this team.
Wow, tailor-made for you after what you said earlier about Max. Oh, he's gonna brick it.
I'm a brick.
Well, that was an air ball. I don't know if we can count that as a brick, but just next time I would appreciate the brick hitting the rim.
Okay.
Thank you, Jovan.
I was gonna make a joke I don't want to make.
Just save it. Yeah.
Certain player.
We know where you're going with that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like if we're saying like role, I think the biggest question mark is it's gonna be like if Vando comes back, if Gabe Vincent come back. I think those are two slightly bigger question marks, just because I think those guys would likely have certain spots in the rotation. Gabe was, I think people forget, like he was the primary offseason addition.
Yeah,
he was the guy the Lakers paid
the
most money of any of their additions. So like
stuff. Supposed to be their point of attack defender on the perimeter, could hit threes, could potentially
coming off a
close
great
games.
playoff run with
Stuff.
Miami.
So like if you get that guy back in mid-March, hypothetically, like I don't see how he doesn't play unless he just physically can't, right? But if he's able to go, I feel like he probably has a role in this team. So I'm already kind of expecting, like, I think Max Christie, when the rotation is full or close to full, he's probably just outside of it at this point. Like I think Cam probably plays above him. We know Torian's going to play above him, Spencer. So like I don't, even though I believe in Max, I think he's kind of had a smaller role than he should have all season. I don't have illusions of like when they're healthy, he's not going to play. But I think right now when they're not healthy, like he should be playing more than he is.
I don't quite remember the question. I'm just going to brick it, just to brick it.
Thanks for hitting the rim, though.
Yeah, just, and also I think they have other problems besides figuring out what to do with Max Christie. You've got the offensive rebounding issue, which we saw in full force against Phoenix. We've got some three-point defending issues. They were worst in the league, or one of the worst in allowing threes. They've actually shooting them well. I mean, they actually won the three-point battle against Phoenix. They were +6 behind the arc, but there's the injury thing. I feel like there's a host of issues ahead of. I'm not even sure if that was a question, but Max to me is probably the 6th or 7th biggest problem awaiting them.
Close enough, Brez.
Yeah.
All right, why don't you start this time, Brez? The Clippers released their new logo and jerseys for next season and moving forward. Brez, bucket or brick on the new Clippers stuff?
I'm going to defer to Jovan, and here's why. Because you are Mr. Color Coordinated. You're Mr. I feel like you're a sneakerhead. You care about logos. You care about who looks like what. So I'm curious to hear what you think. I know what I think, but I want to hear what you think first.
I'm going to brick.
Yeah.
It's a good brick.
That was
much improved.
Much
better
better.
brick.
So like I think it's a step. It's better than the current branding. It reminds me a little bit too much of the Washington Wizards when you actually just like look at the colorway.
Just the look.
I like the. I would have liked more red and royal, or potentially going back to like the Buffalo Braves colorway, the San Diego Clippers, like kind of mixing it up. Like to me, I think I don't know if I believe in like the Clipper curse necessarily, but I do think there's something to like just things have tended to go wrong with the current name and the current colorway, and like I think they've been overdue for probably a name change, to be honest. And I know when I covered the team in the past, like some people in the fan base wanted that, and like so I guess they're committed to the name. But to me, I think it was a step in the right direction. I also think like the script on the jersey, on the colored jerseys, like the blue and the red one, it feels like it's not as legible as you would like. So to me, I think it's better, but it's still a miss.
That's the in-depth analysis I was hoping to get, because I won't get nearly as deep. Yeah, it's a brick. Yeah, I see what they're doing. They're entering their new arena in 6 months or so. I mean, that's coming. It's right around the corner. It's an improvement. It's an improvement. I don't hate the boat or the Clipper or the ship.
The logo is better. I mean, the other logo is terrible.
Yeah, no, I it's an improvement, but I just, it didn't move me. It just didn't.
All right. Yeah. Next question, bucket or brick? Lakers will make it out of the play-in tournament and reach an actual playoff series.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, again, I'm probably trending more toward them being the 8th seed right now, with the way the last week or so has gone.
Hold on, so you've gone from 9 earlier in the show, and now we've gotten you up
even
to
if
8?
they were 9, I had them.
I see. So winning that
9
game
in the regular season,
Gotcha.
and then earning the 8th seed.
Got it. Winning on the road.
So
Like
winning 2
I think
playing
I just trust LeBron and AD in a one-game setting. Like I think we saw
Gotcha.
it with the in-season tournament. We've seen it in previous play-in tournament or playing games. Like I trust those two guys in a one-game setting.
Lakers 2-0 in playing games, right? Beat the Warriors one year, and then beat the Timberwolves last year.
Yeah, I agree. I think they find a way to put it together. They start getting some bodies back. Really curious to hear about the Gabe Vincent timeline. You know, when is he back?
Yeah, I don't know if Vincent is something I would count on. At this point of the season, but Vanderbilt to me is the big one.
I was just about to say him too. I mean, those two guys. I think you can get around a Christian Wood absence. You don't want Hayes to be your only backup big, obviously, but LeBron jumped her off the bench last night. He said, "I'll be the small ball 5 towards the end of the second quarter." To me, he's like, "All right, I'll do it, whatever I have to."
He and Rui sort of did it last year in the postseason.
Yeah, so that can happen. But yeah, that's that.
Okay, gotcha. Number 4, bucket or brick. Victor Wembanyama is already a top 3 defender in the NBA. This, of course, coming off of the game in which we saw him block 5 shots the night after he had blocked 5 shots and just looked spectacular.
Mike, I'm going to go first because I know you're a big fantasy basketball guy.
Mm-hmm.
I made a case the other night, it's kind of off the air. This guy might be the top overall pick in fantasy drafts next year. I mean, because of the defensive stats.
Yeah,
Jokic is still
Jokic.
Up
I would
there.
still go Jokic 1,
Yeah.
but Wemby, like, here you finished. You finished. I got excited because you mentioned fantasy basketball. Go ahead.
Wemby this year was what, 20th in fantasy drafts, 25th, somewhere
Something like
around
that.
there.
Yeah.
Ohm took him in the draft that I was in, and I think he's going to be a top. He might be the number 1. Because of the defensive explosivity that he can give you.
So are you going top? You are going top 3 though, defender.
Yeah,
and then you
for sure.
And then you expand
in real
it.
and fantasy.
Okay. So Jovan, I'll just say this fantasy basketball wise. So right now, like for the last 2 weeks, he has been the number 1 overall player. The concern relative to Jokic is that Jokic doesn't jump and therefore doesn't get hurt. And he basically is playing anywhere between 79 and 82 games every year.
Yeah, he's pretty durable.
And Wemby, he's been, first of all, credit to him. He really takes care of his body.
Yeah.
He has been healthy for almost the whole season. He's only missed a couple of games. The Spurs limited his minutes early in the season. They're still limiting him to an extent.
Which is
and
weird
he's
to
still, if you got him to play 36 minutes, imagine what his numbers would be. So I might still take Jokic just because of the health risk, but I can't go past number 2.
Yeah. I mean, if you draft him, you're probably going to win steals and blocks in your league. I mean, that's 2 out of 8 or 9 categories. That's pretty strong.
So am I doing this for fantasy or for defense?
So we're going back to the question.
Okay.
Feel free, but you can weigh in on the fantasy line.
Sorry to steer you wrong. It's
agree.
real life.
I agree with you guys. Like, I think for me, it depends on the format that you're playing, but like I love players that get steals and blocks. So to me, I'm going bucket.
Yeah.
I think for me, I wouldn't have said this like a few weeks ago, but I think the way that his growth has accelerated. And like to me, like the 2 biggest differences from when we saw him in December versus now were like the passing, like his passing out of double. I mean, he almost had a triple double, had 8 assists. Like his passing is at a different level. The way that they're using him now, and then of course like his defense is just. I've made the comparison of like to me he feels like a superhero, like at the beginning of a superhero movie, just kind of like figuring out how to use their powers. And you can't teach like. I mean, he's 7'5". I know they list him at 7. He's 7'5". He's got a over 8 foot wingspan. Like he's just he has physical gifts you can't teach, but then he's competitive. He's smart. He has really good instincts. Like I just thought some of the things he did defensively against the Lakers were incredible. And to me, he might not be there on a night to night basis, but his upside clearly is like top 3 on a nightly basis.
Yep.
Brez, hand me a brick real quick, I'm just gonna answer the question myself. Oh, I went in. Is that
Too
count?
good of a shooter.
Okay, well, I just want to hit the rim. You're right. Thank you. I would say right now, though, I'm not giving him top 3 yet. So Anthony Davis, to me, is the best defensive player in the league. Most people, I think, are going to give it to Gobert based on Minnesota's team defense. I think that he benefits some from Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels on the perimeter, and then Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid and the length and all that. But so he's going to be in there. And then his games have been down, but like OG Anunoby, if he could get back to that level, or just some other perimeter defender in that vein, because you can still attack Wemby as AD has done in the 2 games that he's played against him. And Wemby isn't as good yet at switching out onto perimeter play players as, say, an AD is. He's going to get there. He's going to get there very soon. I just think that a lot of what we've seen from him so far is that he has all of this freedom. He's 7'5", and he's going to get his hands on everything. But their base defense still isn't great, even when he's on the floor, because there are some ways you can expose him. That will change as he builds some strength. But great stuff from both of you guys tonight. We appreciate everybody listening. Thank you guys so much. This has been the Lake Show podcast, presented by Jack in the Box. If you do like what you hear, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. We want to hear from you, so send us your questions. Until next week, see you guys.
Good hosting, Mike. Thank you.